but because we're still doing virtual programming, I want to encourage you guys to challenge maybe some friends in your neighborhood, or maybe even your siblings or your parents to do this challenge. This is called the Tallest Paper Challenge. All you need for this experiment is paper, tape, and something heavy to balance on the top. I'm going to be using a can of my cat's food. What you're going to be doing for the experiment is you're going to be building the tallest tower you can, and then at the end of the challenge, you've got to balance a can of food at the top. And whichever tower stands with the can of food on top of it wins, okay? I'm going to show you an example of this later on with Amy Kay from South Branch Library. It's going to be really fun, and I'm going to beat her in the challenge. Okay, so before I get to that, first, let's talk about the science behind the Tallest Paper Challenge. Today, we're actually going to be talking about engineering and architect. What are engineers? Well, engineers are people that design and build things for the benefit of society. A lot of engineers will design buildings or towers or designs or processes, and usually they are to help correct something or to improve something in our society. There are 4 different types of engineers. You have civil engineers who build bridges, roads, and dams. Electrical engineers design and develop electrical equipment. Mechanical engineers design power equipment like engines, turbines, even refrigerators. And chemical engineers design and solve problems related to chemicals, fuel, and food. Related to engineers are also architects. Architects are people who design really cool structures. So if you think about some really cool structures here in the world, and here in a few minutes there's going to be some pictures of some of the really cool towers that have been built in the world. Usually those are the architects. They're the ones that are responsible for making buildings look cool. Usually architects are going to be working very closely with the clients they're building this stuff for to make sure the client is pleased with the work. And also architects are a lot of artists. They really want to put a lot of artistry in there, and they want to just make you step back and be like, dude, that's a cool building. But engineers, they work with architects to actually make sure the building is not going to fall over. Because while architects want to make the building look cool, and yes, they also want to make sure it will stand up at the end of the day, the engineers are looking at the science. They're looking at the materials used in the building. They're looking at to make sure the building doesn't fall over. They're making sure, they want to make sure that the windows and the doors all work okay. They want to make sure it's safe for people to live in or to use as an office space or for whatever it's being used for. So a lot of times, engineers and architects work really closely together. Skyscrapers are a really good example of this. How many of you guys have ever seen a skyscraper? They're really tall. But did you know that skyscrapers actually didn't exist about 90 to 100 years ago? Maybe about 100 years or so ago, the tallest buildings were only 10 stories tall. The reason is because architects and engineers didn't have materials that could support the weight of the building to build higher than 10 stories. That is until engineers developed steel beams. They actually invented steel beams. Steel beams are stronger than wood, and they allowed engineers the ability to make a building that was safe and to be higher than 10 stories tall. And so once that was developed, then skyscrapers just started shooting up into the world all over the place. It was actually really cool. Today, we call the steel beams that engineers developed sturdy beams. They also build observation towers. We know what skyscrapers are, but what are observation towers? Well, usually they're a tower where you can observe something from afar. And there's some stuff all over the world, and here in a second you're going to see some pictures of some really cool observation towers. But unlike skyscrapers that are filled with apartments and office buildings and used space, observation towers are usually hollow on the inside and usually have something at the top for you to stand and look out for miles on end on the top. Here are some really cool observation towers that you can see if you travel all over the world. You have the Space Needle in the United States of America. You have the Tempura TV Tower in India. The Swan Bells Observation Tower in Australia. The Yangon Radar Station in Myanmar. The Eiffel Tower in France. The Sky Tower in New Zealand, the CN Tower in Canada, radio towers in England, fire lookout towers in the United States, and another fire lookout tower in Poland, and also water towers in the United States. And if you're interested, there's actually a water tower, I think pretty much right next door to Thornton Library, and I'm sure there's some all over Creedmoor and Butner, and some in Stovall and Berea as well. So you can probably find water towers all over the place, which is really cool. Before we get to today's lesson, let's talk about some of the things that you're going to need to know before building your tallest paper challenge, okay? First, beams. Long, skinny elements that are put together to make trusses, which can be very strong and help support the tower. You want these in your tower, or else your tower is going to fall over either while you're trying to build it or at the end when you're trying to balance something heavy on top. So you've got to make sure you have beams, you've got to make sure you have support in your tower. Also, if you have an object in your tower that's being squished together, it's called compression. But if you have an object on your tower that's being pulled apart, it's called tension. You want to have a balance of these because compression and tension help also support the tower, but you don't want too much of them, or again, your tower is going to fall over and all the people will go bye-bye. That's not what we want. We want people to be okay, and we want the tower to stand, and more importantly, we want the cat food to balance at the top of the tower. So that is our goal today. All right. Also, if you think about it, if you ever bend a piece of paper, this is really easy to bend, right? But if I had a whole stack of paper, let's say, here's my notebook right here. If I had this whole, so this notebook is still pretty easy to bend, but let's say I had 10 notebooks stacked on top of each other. I couldn't really bend it really well, could I? The resistance that the stack of 10 notebooks would have on top of each other bending is called a cross section. That cross section, which is normally called I-beams in for both architects and engineering today, is really important because once again, it adds structure and it adds stability to your tower, and it also keeps the tower from falling because it can't bend and collapse, okay? Remember, we don't want our tower to bend and collapse. We want it to stand, and more importantly, we want to balance our cat food on top. So let's go on for our challenge. You are welcome to, once again, challenge your friends, your siblings, or your parents to the tallest paper challenge. I'm going to challenge Amy Kay at South Branch Library. All right, like I said before, I am here with the lovely Amy Kemp from South Branch Library. We are going to challenge each other to the tallest paper challenge. In this challenge, we are each going to build as tall of a tower as we can with paper and tape. Here's your tape. And at the end of our time, we are each going to balance a can of Wild Salmon Florentine, some of my cat's favorite cat food. And if it balances, well, whoever has the tallest tower that can balance a can of food on top will win. And whoever falls loses. Yeah. So this is going to be really fun.
We have nothing writing on this. This is just for bragging rights.
I already told everyone that I'm going to beat you, so.
Well, we didn't. There's no consequence for losing.
There is
other
not.
than shame.
So much shame. All right. So, ready to go? We'll have about 20-ish minutes, 15 to 20 minutes.
You want to say 4:50 or 4:45?
Let's do 4:50.
4:50.
All right, ready? Go. that was our 20 minutes of stress. As you can see, Amy K's is clearly taller, so I will let her do the honors.
No, I want to see yours.
Take
Yours definitely will hold that can, I think.
It's got a balance on the
If you can
can.
balance it.
Ah!
Congratulations. Okay, so while Amy C's tower is considerably shorter, it does carry the weight of the can.
I did use engineering skills that we talked about in our lesson.
Now the question is, will my tower, which is considerably taller than Amy Carlson's tower, hold the weight? The problem is I'm using tape that doesn't stick to anything.
Gotta let it go some way, you guys.
Oh,
Notice everyone how my tower is still standing with the ceiling while it's standing on top.
my tape is not sticking, therefore my tower is not going to work.
I don't think engineers use excuses.
Well, if some engineers had provided the right supplies, I wouldn't need to. Anyway,
It's still tape. Ah! Okay, hold up.
I think both of our problems is balance.
Yeah.
Because you can't.
Mine.
There you go.
Do I win the bragging rights for this competition?
I think
Okay.
you do. Hold on.
Shall we?
I wanna
Shall you strengthen it with this tape and see if it will work?
Well, the issue is the guidelines aren't sticking to the carpet because this tape doesn't stick to the carpet.
Oh, that's true. Does any tape stick to carpet?
Yeah. Let me see a little bit more tape. Let me see if I can fortify it enough to work.
We'll give Amy K a couple of mercy minutes.
The science is sound because, let me get on camera. The science is sound because for this particular challenge, the issue isn't how much weight you can hold, it's how tall you are. So as long as it can withhold the weight, all you really need is the height. So as long as you have a support beam and then some tension to balance it out, it should work. I think my
Notice
issue
how
is
notice how she used the science words we talked about in our lesson.
the science is sound. My
She wasn't
construction
even
is
there.
not.
She wasn't even there when we talked about the lesson. Good job, Amy K.
All right, let me see if with this added support, we can make something happen. Here we go. There you go.
All right, you want to try for two? Double the fish.
I don't think it's gonna do two. Yeah, it's not gonna do two, but it'll do one.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm personally going to declare myself the winner because not only did I balance, but it balanced two of them. So I'm going to declare myself the winner. Yes, Amy K's was actually a pretty ingenious tower, honestly.
I don't know how to hold this camera. Hold on. There's my.
Go portrait. Turn it lengthwise.
There's my tower.
Yay! Anyway, as you can see, this is actually a really fun challenge. So I encourage you guys to get your parents, get your siblings, get your friends in the neighborhood, enjoy this toilet paper challenge.